I'm going to hand over firstly to Vidya, and then Nikhil, and then Krista, and then Cavin. So Vidya, are you ready to go? Ooh, looks like Vidya's not on the screen anymore, which is worrying. Okay, looks like Vidya has dropped off, which means, Nikhil, are you ready to go for your 7 minutes? Great, we have a screen share. Can you say something so that we know that you're... I still can't hear you. Oh, Nikhil's now dropped off. Right, things did not running as smoothly as they could have done, but we are only 4 minutes in. So, Krista, you're next in line to go first. Are you ready to go first? You are?
Yes, I am.
Great. Okay, so I am super excited. Everyone, Krista from Global Digital Library, but I'm sure it's going to talk about other things. I'm over to you.
All right. Let me see if I can share my screen. Here we go. Can you guys see my presentation? Let me see.
Yeah.
Now?
Yes.
Ooh,
yes, we can see. And
we're
yes, 7 minutes. So, I'll give you a warning with a minute to go.
Thank you. So my name is Chris. I work with the Norwegian government and a project called the Global Digital Library. We will, of course, work closely with a bunch of partners as part of the Global Book Alliance. Our specific task is to gather content in as many languages as we can and share them on a platform called the Global Digital Library. We're focusing primarily on early grade reading and books, but we have worked with games for the last 5 years in different contexts. And we've been working with games both in the context of early grade reading and math, which is the topic here today. I have in my title also dropped in AI and NLP, or natural language processing, simply because I think there is no either a game or a static content piece. I think elements in between can be made come alive, so to speak, by new technology like AI or text to speech, for instance. So I'll come back to that as well during my 7 minutes. So our work on games started in 2015 with EdTech Syria. You might have heard about it. It was a literacy game competition as part of the Syrian refugee crisis. And the Norwegian government funded the competition, and it was ran under All Children Reading. We had 2 winners, Feed the Monster and Antura and the Letters. Both games based on the Android platforms focused on Arabic. What's really cool about this specific project, it was released under a Creative Commons license, and our friends at Curious Learning out of Boston actually took that game and saw to it that it was translated to more than 50 languages with high quality, which is super awesome. And you can now find this game both in Arabic, English, and a ton of other languages, which is pretty cool. Since we're all talking about games, I just want to play. I'm suspecting you might not hear the sound of it, but I'll turn up my local computer just to give you a feel of what a game is in my mind, because this is a good example of a gamified experience. Oh, sorry about that. I want to show this because I think games in themselves create a learning environment that is very, very different from static content. Playing games, having fun, whether it's a physical game like this or a digital game like this, or if it's a physical game in the classroom, it gives another learning environment. It gives another element to the learning experience that you cannot create in another way. And in many contexts, gaming is not sort of a positive word. We think it is really, really the driver for curiosity, for involvement of the child and so forth. And this was the first game that we really, really saw that in. And of course, it's focused on early grade literacy, but of course, the same thing goes for math, it goes for science, it goes for any aspect of learning that gaming can be a part of. And I think when we look at the social piece of it all, the life skills element, we've only seen the very, very brink of, or the first touches of what gaming can do within learning. I mean, for literacy and for math and a few other subjects, we've seen many apps over the few years. So we took this experience with us when we started with the Global Digital Library, which is like the opposite end of things, where we collect books. And we started collecting games as well that could be contextualized to the books and to the topics in the books. Many of the books that we have numbers, some sort of counting, some sort of elements that you have in terms of numbers, addition, subtractions, and so forth. And we have created a collage of games that we have tested in 4 countries that starts at the very, very bottom or the early stages and grows with the child as they move. And as you can see on the right side here, it's a very simple setup. And the same goes for the blue one in the background. Those are simple math games that can be contextualized to a story that you are reading, and you can gamify parts of the experience. And for us, this also shows that math and early grade literacy are both really, really important, and they're connected at many, many levels. The blue game in the background, I'll also show you, it was used by a visually impaired child that we tested with in Cambodia. I'll actually end my talk with that. We also had different games that can be contextualized within the stories that are sort of attached to the learning experience. And I want to emphasize that these are, in many cases, interactive elements and not pure gaming experiences. We think that is sort of a middle ground that will be more flexible and scale better, both in terms of bandwidth, as we talked about yesterday, offline ability, and so forth. The last series of games that we are working on right now is actually assessment games as well. So the idea is to create a visual world, what we define as monsters. This one is actually the last one that was sketched this week, so you guys are the first to see it. And what we do is we take elements of sort of the world that you need to walk through to learn to read, and we test you and provide you with resources that are contextualized and required for you as you are there and then. So the context of the child, the knowledge of the child is measured through gaming, not through quizzes or anything else, but through gaming, and then we present them with resources that are relevant. This platform here is also scaling to math with a very slightly different configuration. This would be a quiz of addition, for instance, instead of, in this case, words. What we have covered so far is, for those of you who are working with literacy, you'll recognize letter names, sounds, sight words, and vocabulary. These are the ground elements that we cover. Also here, in a very close collaboration with Curious Learning, that has been a really important partner to get up to the structure that we are at this point. We have done the development of the tech. They have been working on the structure. Yeah. The magic here is that all these elements are Creative Commons, both the tech and the content. And it just proves when we have the GDL and Google comes along and has a gaming experience of reading with their Read Along app, was launched 2 months ago, 3 months ago now. They took content from us and different sources and they gamified the reading experience. So I think also we need to for us, it's a very natural part of what we do to have content and data that can be reused by others in case they have great ideas of gamifying a solution. At the end, I am just going to mention that we need to create games that are for everyone. And we've been working on testing games for visually impaired children. And instead of playing the whole film here, because it's 1 minute and 20 seconds, I'm just going to play the last part of it. And you'll see a visually impaired child in Cambodia that uses a mobile telephone for reading and for gaming with math elements, using voice, text-to-voice and AI components on the phone. And it's really a sort of a deep subject of complexity, but the end game must be that also visually impaired children, for example, can enjoy games as well. So I'll just play 20 seconds of this video so you can see some of the points that are in it. And I'll share the link to the whole film, which is 1.5 minutes, in the chat afterwards. Here it asks 47 plus 13, if you can't hear the sound. And he swipes to listen. And he gets information from the voice. 66 is wrong. And when he finds the correct answer, he double clicks. And based on that, he can enjoy. And this was one of the games that I mentioned earlier on, a math game that is HTML5 compatible, which means it can be online. And we've created that, or tested that game towards visually impaired children in 2 countries. So to sum up, we've done a ton of things on games, both in context with books, but also in a pure math setting. And we find it's important, a very important piece of the learning environment that we're trying to create.
Great, thanks very much, Krista. I'm going to clap my hands because I feel like it's strange not having an audience. I will say you are actually very lucky because I've recently made the switch from iOS to Android that I'm very, very pleased about for many reasons. But it does mean that I'm testing out new things. So the alarm that I was expecting to go off didn't go off. So you got an extra minute there. Congratulations for you. I'm going to allow one follow-up question for whoever kind of comes in first on questions. If there's anybody in the audience that does have a specific question for Krista, you've got 5 seconds to type it in now. Otherwise, I will go to Tony's question. Who's put it in? I'm hoping for somebody else valiantly engaging. All right, we're going to go to Tony's question. So Tony has asked, can you explain the type of content partners that you hope to attract to the initiatives that you've discussed?
So in many cases, if gaming, there's a different content portfolio altogether. So we have the books and we have some of the illustrations, but what we see in this sector, for instance, Curious Learning has been a very, very important partner for us because they have developed the concept that can be gamified within the scope of early grade reading. So it's a different type of content partner altogether. And it's a bit more complex to harvest that content than what would be the case if it was books.
Brilliant. Thank you, Krista. Vidya, going to hand over to you now. That wasn't a good example, but I do tend to be very strict on timing. So when my alarm goes off, it will just go and keep getting louder. I can put it closer and closer to the microphone.
I'm going to rely on your new
Sis,
Android experience.
I can't hear you.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Great. No, can hear you now. Over to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. And can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? Were you able to see my screen? Oh, you are. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for an Education Alliance for this great platform. So I'm Vidya, and I am the CEO of Rounded Learning. Rounded Learning was started with the mission to bring together the latest research and the latest technology to create high-impact educational games. And I'm excited to share Problemscape with you today. So what is Problemscape? It is a role-playing adventure game which is set in a 3D virtual world. And I just have some clips that are playing in between my talk, but I'm just going through my slideshow. So back to what is Problemscape. It is also a game that's developed with fun and engagement in mind. See, we have multiple game-based activities in the game designed for keeping it engaging for kids. It's also a problem-based learning game for introductory algebra, which uses the game's narrative to put a spotlight on applications of math. So for example, they go to a mining shop and the mining shopkeeper does not know how to convert currencies, so they're asked to help the mining shopkeeper. It's also an integrated learning environment that has videos, animations, practice, and review. But most importantly, I think it is our vision of how research can be brought to practice. And I would like to show you some examples of how we use research in our design process. For example, when we develop an activity, we look at learning science research to see if there is empirical evidence to support a particular teaching methodology. So sometimes it also goes the other way, and we get inspired by some research to create an activity. For example, in Problemscape, we have something called the TeachPad, which was developed with a grant from the National Science Foundation. And it was inspired by studies done at Stanford University that actually showed that students put more effort into learning when they know that they have to teach a concept to someone else. So in this activity, using the TeachPad, the player has to teach a virtual character how to evaluate expressions using the order of operations. And we also show the students how what they taught the character is getting used. So the character uses the instruction to work through a problem, and the student sees what they're doing, so they know what they did right and what they did wrong. And also to design activities, we use research in cognitive science as our guide. So we take into consideration cognitive load, working memory capacity, and also create interactions that introduce productive difficulty and strengthen associations in long-term memory. So when they're learning the order of operations, we don't ask them to actually evaluate, do the arithmetic, so that they can actually focus on learning the order of operations. And to make videos for math concepts, we actually start with questions like, what makes this particular concept difficult to learn? What are common misconceptions and mistakes? And then we look for answers in mathematics education research. So you probably cannot hear the audio for this, but so one of the common problems that students have is that they cannot, they get confused between what is 3 times 5 and 3 to the power of 5. So we visually try to explain that. And then another example is in order of operations, even after they have learned the order, lots of kids get confused by one particular thing, which is when to do addition and subtraction, what comes first. So we look at common misconceptions, common mistakes, and then actually address those in the videos that are part of the game. And finally, we use research in psychology to understand what can increase students' motivation and the persistence in problem solving, and how to decrease their math anxiety. So very early on in the game, we use the narrative and the dialogue to actually quiz the student on how confident they are in math, and what their anxiety level is. And then we use that information throughout the game. And every time they successfully complete a problem, we use the dialogue to reinforce their self-efficacy. So say, last time you said you were anxious, how are you feeling now? And if they're still anxious, then we say, like, think about the times that you actually solved the problems. And so we reinforce and motivate them. We are generating, we are educating a generation of kids who grew up playing video games or interacting with amazing immersive virtual worlds. And Problemscape is our first attempt to use the power of technology and the power of research to make games that actually make a difference. And we believe that using research is one of the most important things when we think about developing games for kids. I'm done with the presentation, so I'm happy to answer questions.
Lovely, thank you very much, Vidya. So I haven't seen any follow-up questions, so I'm going to jump in with one very briefly. I'm just interested to know through it how many kind of users of your software, or students or learners, have you had kind of engaged with it so far up until this point?
We have just launched. 1.5 months back, we launched the iPad version, and just very recently, we launched a version for the Windows and the Mac, and we are working on. Oh, can you hear me? Okay. So I was just saying that we are just launching maybe 50 users. I haven't checked recently, but we are in the process of launching. Yes.
Great. Thank you very much, Vidya. I'll do a round of applause again. Nikhil, over to you. Great, we can hear you. Vidya, I think you'll need to stop sharing your screen if possible. Sorry. Great, and Nikhil, 7 minutes. Over to you. Looking forward to it.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are on audio, and we can see your screen. You're good.
Okay, great. Yeah, hello, my name is Nikhil. I'm from India, and first of all, I would really like to thank IM Education Alliance for providing us an opportunity to present one of the innovations, I would say inventions, that I've done for students. So I think 3 years back, actually, I was preparing for GRE, and I encountered with the subject trigonometry again at the very basic level. And when I started studying back again, I faced a bit of phobia and anxiety, and I realized that the education system come like 10 years back has not done justice. And I realized I think gaming is a thing that really can contribute to it. Even I'm not a brain developer, but I think I really wanted to contribute to the education system capacity. So I actually invented this game, Trigonik. I realized that the phobia and anxiety is still high, and that need to be reduced. So that's how this game look actually. So many of the startup actually says that they want to be the Uber of something or Netflix or something. We just say that we want to be the Ludo of 21st century. So I just want to give you a brief overview how this Trigonik game looks. So it is a trigonometry based game. So if you see, it has 2 dices and this unit circle. So this unit circle is inspired by this angles calculations in which 2 players can actually play this game, just like in Ludo you play it. It is a tabletop game. The strategy uses like counting and probabilities, and it can be used by the children about the age of 10. Usually, trigonometry in India actually comes at the age of 13 to 14, but this game has a capacity to enhance the early stage learning among the children. So that's how this game looks. The USP of this game is the dices. If you see, one dice has this trigonometry function, sine, cos, tan, cot. Other dice has this angles, and using these two dices, children can play around this game. So trigonometry is a big subject. We know we cannot teach it at one books, but we can actually remove the phobia. So these are the two basic tables, and all the children have to learn these values, and it's very difficult to learn. So we just thought that if we can, use these tables at a very basic level, and children can use the coins and can play around it. So this is currently the first prototype. I mean, we have launched in February. We got manufactured around 1,100 boxes, and currently the first prototype we are selling at around $449. It's around $7 USD. We awarded by India. We got awarded by India Book of Records as well, because we realized the fact that in India, actually, if you have to sell the things, you have to show it that this game is something really different and unique. We really want to design this game for blind people as well. We really want to care about how we can make this version affordable. So we really want to move ahead with a multiple variant of this product. So if you have to go to the villages and NGOs, we know that people sell it at $449 or $7 USD. In India, it's not possible, but we have to go to affordable. We're going to go to standard versions, and then we want to do 3D premium versions as well. This is our team. We have Sunil Gupta and we have Pankaj. We all three visited the schools. We have currently done the pilot with around 600 children in 3 schools. So like children of like 12, 13, and 14. We have done this pilot with them, and we have actually got a great response from them. I'm really proud to say that we have actually got orders from all 3 schools of 600 boxes initially. So I'll show you one video, and you will be able to see the excitement of the children. I mean, so you can see these children are playing, and I actually I was so happy to see them enjoying this game in the schools, and I really want that this game should go actually all the schools. Yeah, so it's a small clip. So currently we're focusing on India. India is a huge market. We have 1.5 million schools, millions of children, and we really want that this game should reach every school, not just India, but all over the world. But now it's not possible just from our side. We have to really collaborate with various organizations, national, international, to help us to reach to the ground. Currently, we are in the process to commercialize it. We got a great reviews and feedbacks to improve it. So we are really working on UX, and we recently launched a basic mobile application. It has basically EDA is not the game. We'll be launching the game next year once we are able to sell like 10,000 of boxes and able to see that whether we should go for mobile application or not. We have an outreach plan to reach out the schools, because I've recently seen that it's not about just innovation. It's really important how you deploy the innovation. So for this, our game is completely like a venture. How we can go to the school in any capacity, whether it can be used as gift, workshop stalls, maths lab. I personally went to Wien Maker Mela, sold these boxes to people, given the demonstrations, share the process with them, that how the game has been designed, why it has been designed. This game has been reviewed by Honorable Chief Minister of Rajasthan. They really supported the government-run incubator also supported us and provided some support. And that's all. I think my personal my motivation for designing game are simple 3 reasons. First is vision. I really want to see gaming as a mainstream part of education. Still, I think in a country like India, gaming is not considered for a kind of education. I really want that it should be done. Second is the impact. We really wanted to impact. I mean, impact in terms of motivating teachers, because teachers have met me and they really told me that they really want to design super cool games like this. So in future, we really want to help them to design their own games. Third is personal legacy. I think games can really help to create my own legacy. The great thing about this product, it has a long lifespan. So every school can have it at any point of time. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. That was wonderful. And also very well on time as well. So I'm keen to bring in somebody to ask their question and stay on and be a human as much as possible. So Eduardo and Carmen, can you try to come on? I think you just click ask to share video and audio, and we will see if you come on. Great, I think.
Hi, Jamie and team.
Hi, Carmen. And great. And is Eduardo, are you on as well? Right. Apparently not. So, Carmen, could you ask the question for both you and Eduardo? Over to you.
Happy to. Thank you, Nikhil, for this super interesting presentation. My family are huge board game players, and so I totally want to get my fingers on the board game. But talking about getting my fingers on the board game, Eduardo's question was whether the game is open to use. Can, for example, the game board be printed and played with the files of the game? And I sort of shot my question along with Eduardo's, adding if you are also interested or able to distribute the files to 3D print the dice that are custom dice and other figures that we need to play the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see our mission is that we want to reach out to all over the world. But we are actually working with how we can do this. I mean, that's where I'm looking for some kind of mentorship and support, because I recently received an inquiry from Australia. And they were asking the same question, can we do that? But I mean, we just have to see that how we can, share it in a way that it should not get copied or being pirated. I mean, I would be happy to do that in future.
Thanks, Nikhil. And before I go offline, because I see Janvi also having a question, and maybe that person would also like to get on video, maybe quickly about what about repeated play? To what degree does the game offer new scenarios over repeated play?
I don't have a specific answer for that, but I think it's a very simple game. If anyone has played Ludo, it is inspired by that. So it don't have that level of repetitions. We are actually working on upgrading it. So one of the pro version, it has that you have to use the value and calculate according to the moves. So I think we will be developing more media to how to play it in a multiple ways. So just like people play carom in a multiple way, people play billiards in a multiple, playing cards in a different way. We have the same way to play it in a different way. So we are working and testing out that, because time really matters in board game. If the board game stretch so long, it will make children bored.
Fantastic. I will say, Carmen, can you stay on screen? Oh no, Carmen's already gone. Others who are on screen, Vidya and Krista, I would encourage you to turn on your videos so that whoever's presenting can see nice supportive faces as they're going. And for the next person, oh, fantastic, Carmen is back. I'm going to leave Carmen on screen until we're allowed a maximum of 9. So when we get more than that, I will start booting people off in the order that they came on. Thank you, Nick. I don't think I've ever said this in a professional environment before, but I, at one period in my life, actually got very, very into the board game Risk. And it's one of my claims to fame, being 13th in the world at online Risk. But if only I'd been doing that for something more useful than random maps made of Game of Thrones and the traditional Risk. Excellent. Okay, so Cavin, we are going to hand over to you for 7 minutes. With Carmen here, I would thoroughly encourage the audience to put forward questions, and we'll get you on screen and get you involved in the conversation. So over to you for 7 minutes.
Yeah, so it looks like it can't share my presentation.
Ooh, we have Tony dropping in, hopefully to save the day.
Cavin, I was going to say that when you click on that little icon that shows the screen at the bottom,
Yeah.
Can you click on that? Then it opens up another window, right?
Yeah, then it asks me for browsers, but have a PowerPoint presentation.
And then is the first default is just to share your screen, like the big box below. If you just click on that, if it gets, there's one that should say share your screen.
Can you see my screen now?
There you go. You're good.
Yes.
Great. My name is Cavin, and happy to share with you School Desk. And what we did with School Desk was simply to create a fun, interactive, gamified learning environment. And one of the pain points for teachers was marking paper-based scripts, but we shall get into that later. So our technology involves a plethora of tools for automatic grading, games, puzzles, drag and drop, storybooks, audio, video, interactive virtual tutor. These are the traditional tests which we digitize, and it can show a child which was the correct or the wrong one. This is an interactive video. This is an audio book. It's an African storybook. We are based in Uganda, just for clarification. This is sign language. It's after the audio, after the video, there are some questions. So the analytics engine is built of text similar to how the chess game works. So on the chess game engine, what happens is every time you make a move, the chess game engine analyzes the best scenario, which was the best move you could have made, your mistakes, what did you lose out, and that's how we built the analytics engine. So every activity on the platform is logged, and we have won a couple of grants. There are 10 million children. We developed this for primary schools in Uganda, shall expand to secondary level. There are 10 million children in primary and about 20,000 primary schools. So I still have some time, but maybe what I can talk in more detail about the chess game engine is that if you go to chess.com, I hope I have like 2 minutes left.
You've got just under 4 minutes.
Okay. So if I go on the chess engine, I don't know if it will show me my past games, but yeah, it might show me some of my past games. But everything that happens on the chess engine is logged for the best move and the worst. Obviously, it's not accurate because there's 10 scenarios where you might make a sacrifice and maybe the chess engine hasn't realized that you made a sacrifice. Yeah, I think that's all I can share for now. That's all.
Great. Thanks so much, Cavin. So Krista has a question, which is brilliant.
Very quick.
Yes, and yeah, over to you.
Thank you for the presentation. I saw some details there. It looked like you guys are using H5P technology. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
That is cool because that is actually an interactive element engine that was developed in our project 3 or 4 years ago, and we still see it different places around the world. Fantastic to see it's been adapted in Uganda as well. That's good.
Yeah, it's actually been around for about 10 years plus.
Great, and Tony, I think, is using his organizer privilege to come in with a question here.
Sure. Can you hear me, Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Cavin. Thanks for joining us, Cavin. So I was just reading literally about the history of chess in this book that I have called about like the history of game boards. I'll drop it in the chat. Really interesting. And know that the Queen of Katwe, which was a really good film about a young woman in Uganda who played chess, take place in Uganda. I'm curious what type of interest or uptake you have from Ugandan youth in the activities that you're working on. Why chess in general, Cavin? Why did you end up focusing on this as an activity?
Yeah, so chess, I'm a chess player. I know Queen of Katwe, I think it won an Oscar or Grammy, one of those things. Yeah, there's interest in chess in schools, but what I've seen mainly for chess, it has been among the older classes. But with the younger classes, they are beginning to introduce it too. So there's interest in chess in Uganda.
And then are you hoping to connect your application, or have you had the opportunity to test it at any schools to get feedback from the youth themselves?
Yeah, we have tested it and we have gotten a lot of feedback. So it's really still early days is all I can say. Yeah. But we have gotten useful feedback.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay, well, thanks again, Cavin. That was super interesting. Oh, and that is, I told you the alarm was vicious. There we go. Off it comes. Great. So we've now got, Tony, it's great you're here. Am I right in thinking that we've got half an hour?
That's right, Jamie. Plenty of time for a Q&A. And I'd also just say encourage it among the participants themselves, just like Krista has been engaged also. That we typically don't have enough time for Q&A. So you all stuck to time because of Jamie and his timer. And this is now an open invitation, Jamie, to ask questions and to invite it with people that are observing as well.
Great. Okay, I'm keen to get, Cavin, can you stop sharing your screen? I think that one. And then Antje, I think, has asked to join with a question. So I'm going to put you in now. And Carmen, if you want to click to join back again, that would be great. And if anybody else has an initial question that they would like to go back with, please do just ask to join the, oh, no, you're on screen. I will take you back off. The way that we'll kind of put your hand up is that you can just ask to join the screen and you can come on and ask in person. So I'm going to kick off with a question to kind of help kind of start along our discussion, and then I'm keen to kind of take questions from the other participants, and we will wait for anybody with the audience to jump in with the hand. So my first kind of question that I've got to the different panelists is around context. I was having a quick read on some of the evidence base around play for learning beforehand, and I came across a paper by Alison Croft that looks at the importance of context-specific nature of learner-centered pedagogy, and she looks at song in Malawi. And my question, and I'll come to the audio that we answered in, so to Krista first, but is around how you're, with what kind of is a piece of technology that isn't often normally context specific, how you are thinking about making it context specific and whether or not you see that as important. And that could be to do with language or any other kind of factors. Krista, over to you.
It's really a key question. I think it's not a simple, simply because some games are contextualized while playing them, both digital games and physical games. But in general, I think if you can, any version of the game should be contextualized not only by language but also by the set of context, the set of school, the set of community you're trying to play it in, by people close to the child, if possible. And of course, in many cases, there are generic purposes for a game, like if you're doing early math. But if possible, doing a contextualizing sort of last mile adaptation to meet the child's needs or adapt for different user scenarios is of course ideal. But I think we need to sort of, at least for some of the general topics, we need to acknowledge that we need to develop games that either can be contextualized as you play them, if possible, or just translated into a ton of languages. We saw this with Ideaforage. There are languages where you can't translate them into because they don't fit the context, but for approximately 50 languages, it actually worked. And then it's adaptable. But the ideal thing is if you can contextualize it with people and resources close to the child.
Just to quickly talk about Problemscape, I think the context comes from making the game tuned to the particular age group of the audience that we are targeting. So the characters in the game are around that age, and we ask the student question, and then we try to put that into the game so that they start relating to the characters as well. But I want to throw, I think it's a really good question about asking for context. And this is one of the questions I also had for Krista, so I'm going to throw it back to Krista. And this has to do with contextualizing reading activities, literacy activities specifically, because a few years back, I actually spent a year in India in a public school. And what I found was that they were actually given a lot of books, like people are donating books, people who are going from the US or UK or whatever, they bring books. And the kids are actually reading books that has like a bathtub, and they're learning for bees, bath. So it's more than language. I think there are lots of things, like they don't want to talk about the rosy cheeks and things like that. So I think there's a more to contextualizing content for the particular user group. I'm curious about what you think of that and what you're doing to do that.
I'm going to make it quick. We do not have any content that has been produced in either the US or in Europe. We only have content from India, and it travels really well to Africa. We have a book that we estimate, it's not ours, it's actually Pratham's, called Fat King, Thin Dog. It's been translated into more than 220 languages. And I'm guessing that number is too low because it's been rising. But what we do is that we have a collection of core books. Before we translate, we select people in the, for instance, in the government of Rwanda, where we're working with them now, and they select context-appropriate content for them, and then they translate. So they actually, they remove some of the content that is not relevant for them. But I want to emphasize, and it's a really good point, there's no European stories here. There are no fog from London or ice cubes from the Arctic. It's stories that are created either in Africa or Asia.
That's very good. I just one more quick question. Do you have time, Jamie? I'm not sure. Because I think I went off when you were talking, so you might have actually talked about it. So do you develop all your content yourself? Do you also curate content that other people develop?
We have some fantastic partners. I can name some names. The US government has funded government-approved content in 25 to 30 languages that we currently have. A huge investment. We haven't paid anything for that. They have freely licensed it. I want to mention African Storybook. I want to mention Pratham and Storyweaver also sourced a lot of books to us. Room to Read. All these sources of books have been provided under a free license, and we publish them on our platform. So we don't produce content at all. We produce games and the platform, but we do not produce content.
And so, Krista, so all of those books, have you gamified all of them, or is it just some?
No. So we've created games based on some of the books, and they're available on the platform called freelearning.io, and there you can have topic-based games that are attached to the titles themselves. So we have picked some topics, picked some titles, and we've started to develop content or interactive elements or games to those. And as I mentioned earlier, I saw H5P as part of the presentation from Uganda. What we're actually looking for is people in the local environments developing new interactive elements to the books themselves. So this open source platform that we developed first for Norway called H5P with approximately 45 content types has now been, it's gone global just organically because it's open source. We're hoping that people will involve themselves locally and then develop content attached to our content. Because as I said, we have been doing some game development from our side, but what we ultimately want to see is locally involved resources, teachers, parents, creating interactive elements in games to the books themselves.
Great. And I'm now keen to bring in Nikhil and Cavin into this conversation. So I'm interested to know, how have you thought about contextualization within the board game, how for the market that you're kind of aiming for, and then also if you've thought about kind of making new versions of it for different content. And then we'll go over to Cavin after for a similar kind of thing of how you've adapted it for the context that you're hoping to use your game and platform in. I can't hear you. If others can hear him, please wave your hands. No.
Ooh. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Great. So far, what I have researched out, because I belong to a tier 2 city in India. So usually, children have the difference between the board game available in the Western countries and in the India is really different. I mean, like still, I told you that India is not a market where like the board game is part of the mainstream education. So the board games need to be simple initially. They can't be complex because affordability is also a big issue. So we just realized that if we have to venture into this board game, we have to design a very simple game so that children can opt for it. So that is the one thing. And I think language is also one thing, because I went to Mumbai and I was pitching to the government school, and I can see a lot of children who are from Maratha background. So they told me that please explain in Marathi. Or I went to the government schools, they told me please explain in Hindi. So we are also looking that if we can design this game, the rules and the design into this multilingual. So that is something I think I saw that need to be done. Yeah.
Great, and Cavin, over to you if you can. If your audio's back on.
Yeah, thanks. In our case, we have mainly looked at translating existing games. We haven't looked at building so many games, but gamifying some of the learning materials, existing learning materials. For example, if a child is asked how many lakes are in Africa, instead of saying 7, the question could be drag the lakes to their respective position. So you drag Lake Victoria, Tanganyika, and others, their correct position. So that has been our main focus. Our focus hasn't been developing so many games, but gamifying existing learning materials. Have I answered your questions?
Yes, I think so, and I'm keen to take in some more questions. And we've only got 15 minutes left, so I've got some really difficult questions, but I'm going to hold them at the end and have a 15-second whip round on the really tough ones. So Tony, over to you.
Yeah, this is a question for the panel, and apologies if it's been already addressed. So I could see bottom-up interest in terms of games, not the least of which of kids around the world love to play games. But then when you get to the formal education system, in terms of how limited time that there is for a teacher to teach mandated curriculum, and then maybe just not being familiar with how to incorporate a game in the classroom curriculum, because it could open up all sorts of opportunities that are outside the traditional instruction format. So I'm curious if you have any sort of good practice examples about adoption, for uses of your games, like a breakthrough with the headmaster at a school or with a local ministry official that basically made it easier to be able to use yours or other games in formal curriculum. Thanks.
So we've just launched, so I can't talk about practices at this point, but we have actually talked to teachers.
Can I start?
Vidya, do you want to finish? And then Cavin, if you could come in after.
Can you hear me?
Great.
Sure. So yeah, I was just going to say so one of the things that's most important to us is that it is used in formal educational environments as well. So I think one thing we do is that we align closely with curriculum, a grade level curriculum, and we also provide the resources for the teacher to help with how the game can be used. We see it used in both classrooms and at home by the student. So we provide the resources for that. I'll leave to Cavin. Cavin?
Great, and then Cavin, do you want to come in on this? Ooh. I'm unable to hear Tony, even though it looks like he's speaking, or Cavin. Krista, can you, and Vidya, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
You can. Cavin, do you want to see if you're able to come in? Yes, great.
Yeah, can you hear me? Great. Yeah, so we realized that quite quickly by reducing teachers' time in marking, because in my first slides I showed a pile of books for teachers. So we think if we reduce teachers' time in marking paper-based scripts, we can create time for them to do more creative things. But it's still early days, and technology, education is a very traditional industry. So yeah, it will happen. But one thing I can say is that COVID has made things, has changed the mindsets of people. They're no longer so opposed to technology as
great.
Before.
Krista,
that's all.
Over to you, and then Nikhil, if you've got anything. It would be good if you can keep it brief, because we've got quite a few more questions to get.
Yep. I just want to say that the assessment games that I mentioned that we are developing are going to be included into a World Bank project. And that is because of COVID-19. It's the only reason why we're doing that shift, and we're able to do that. And we're doing it at a very large scale. So we're hoping to get data back from that. That's giving us some pointers on how this can scale.
Nikhil, I can't hear you if you are trying to come in.
So when we went to the schools initially, we were actually directly selling to the school principal that, okay, we want to sell this board game and train the teachers, but like principals have denied it. So their intention was to should go and take the modules with the children and have them experience it. And once they like it, and then we can place orders. So we changed the first strategy. I think second, we are very optimistic about what we are offering, especially let's say both the board games, online games, and especially creative pedagogies, because in India, especially if you see the new education policies now into the process, and where they have emphasis more on this game-based learning, practical learning, and even Government of India establishes Atal Incubation Center, Atal Tinkering Lab, where they're actually inviting innovative products to be experienced by the children. Third, I think the benefit is like if you see a lot of online education is there. So now schools have to compete with those online coaching centers and training centers to provide the innovative pedagogies. So I think that's where these kinds of stuff can be really good and benefit. Schools can focus more on this to add value.
Great. So I'm now going to jump in with a question that is around inclusion, and coming back to, I think Krista raised it before, around disability inclusion. I think this is a kind of open question. It's a question that's definitely on the implementers, the people like you setting things up, to understand how, to explain how what they're doing isn't going to exclude children or learners with disabilities. And that may be through color blindness, through dexterity, or through kind of eyesight or hearing impairments. And this is obviously something that the gaming industry has done very well and very badly in equal measure, and one that I think for this that we've really got to focus on and get right. So interested to know what it is that you're doing to make sure that you're not driving marginalization for disabled groups. Krista, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll come around in the same orders.
Yeah. So this is an area that I'm really passionate about. I've seen the same as you, Jamie. We need to create games for everyone, and not all games can be equally accessible. But as a starting point, they should be accessible to all. And for us, it's all been about sort of combining complexity with that goal without stretching it too far. Because if you go too complex, that's always makes it more or less always difficult to reach everyone. So what we've been doing over the last 2 years is testing all interactive elements on H5P, the H5P platform, and elements that are connected to the GDL, also games for both reading and math, with visually impaired children specifically as one of our primary underserved groups. And because we find that if we can make that compliant to that group, the platform itself in general ends up being accessible. So in my mind, if you do it as an HTML5 compatible game, it's more of a technical term, but if you do it as a web page, the game, it is possible to make it accessible. And for us as a government-funded project from the Norwegian side, we have a standing order. If we can, we will make it accessible. So that's something we're going to do with all the games that you've seen me present today, except from the first one, which is the Edit Procedure game, which is an Android app. All that has come afterwards will be focused on accessibility as part of what we do. Yeah.
Thank you, Krista. I will say, yeah, from my UK government experience, where it's a very clear mandate to make sure that things are accessible, the difficulty of making something interesting and engaging in the same way as making it difficult. Gov.uk, I would say, I think it's one of the best websites in the world, but it's also one of the most boring. And if you're trying to go for engaging, really difficult. Yeah, how are you thinking about this?
I lost a little bit of the voice, so I don't know who you're addressing, but I'll just answer. I am very aware of how important accessibility is, and we have started doing some things like just text-to-wise options and things like that. But I realize that there's still a lot more we can do to make our games accessible. We started with the idea of bringing this rich virtual worlds to games. But now, as we develop and became more educated on how important it is for the games to be accessible, we have started working on it.
Great. And Nikhil, has this kind of factored into your thinking so far?
Yeah. So as you have seen in the presentation also, I've shared that we really want to design a game for the blind people as well. In fact, 6 months back, we have actually documented how the blind people play Ludo and chess. So we have an entire video on the site that how they play it. However, I realized that we really need to engineer our own game to design for those people, because Braille, you have to design in a Braille, we have to make on 3D, we have to use a 3D printer, we have to create a board in the way that we are also working on a strategy that how we can use even CSR activities to deploy it, because that board going to be expensive compared to what we are offering. So we can even have a strategy that, okay, if we are selling 25 boxes of a game, we can actually gift one board game to the Braille version. So it's a kind of social impact that we really want to do it. But once we are this current game has been developed and deployed, and then we will work with the blind children to design this specific game.
Great, thank you. That is great to hear, and really interesting to hear within the dimension of a kind of physical board game. Cavin, did you get did you hear the question on that? Are you?
I had
part of the
I had part of the question. Do you mind repeating it?
Yeah, sure. So the question's around disability and what you've done to make your software and play-linked digital service accessible for children and learners with disabilities, or challenges you had around.
Yeah, thank you. So right from the start, our focus was on Section 5 white compliance. And for those who are not familiar with it, it's a US law that all government portals have to be accessible. But we go over and beyond that by working on semantics, control, tab order, hidden, invisible, focus field sets, accessible inline form errors, color contrast, and intensity. So right from the start, we had to, it was something that we did from the word go. And also our platform is free for schools with children with disabilities. So operate on a freemium model, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so I can't believe we've only got 3 minutes left. I feel like I have so many questions to ask. So I thought we'd finish with another quick fire. So you've got 30 seconds each to answer this question, and there will be a vicious timer at the end of it. And my question is that we often see that parents or ministers or general gatekeepers within the education system don't see play as learning, or things that are too much like play don't count as learning in the same way as the kind of more teacher-centered pedagogy. So my question to you is, in 30 seconds, if you had you can pick either a parent or a minister or a education sector official in front of you to persuade them that play and your specific type of play is good for learning, what would you say? So you've got a 30-second elevator pitch. And this is where going first comes back at you, Krista, because you have less time to think. So, Krista, 30 seconds, over to you.
I would say that with learning will save the educational system, because it's no longer an educational system, it's a learning environment that is so fragmented and so different from country to country, from setting to setting, that we need gaming to reach everyone.
I can go next. So I'm going to talk in terms of middle school mathematics, because I think middle school is when students actually lose a sense of relevance to math, and they start thinking that it's not something they're ever going to use in their lives. And I think games have a great potential to address that particular gap, because a virtual world and a problem-based learning environment can give students the context to help them understand why they are learning something. In that way, I think games are really great, and parents and the older population will come to that.
Thank you. Nikhil, board games, over to you.
Yeah, I think what the approach we took was very simple. I think the first thing is it's simplifying what we are saying, like in the short, because parents, teachers don't have time to give a lot of time to. So simplifying what we are doing and why we are doing. Especially in our case, parents have also taken the same subject. Second is, I think, helping them to create experiences, whether they can go to store and experience a game and then they can purchase. Third is, I think, relating to the other issues as well. So what we are relating this particular gaming as a mental health issue. So we share that, okay, mental health is a big problem, and that can also be solved. So I think that's how they can attract.
Fantastic, great, and perfectly on time. And Cavin, you're based. Cavin, are you based in Uganda?
Yes, I'm based in Uganda.
Excellent. I am based in Tanzania, so not too far away. And yes, looking forward to you. 30 seconds to persuade somebody about playing your technology. Over to you.
Yeah, I'll tell the minister that the next cure of cancer will come from a kid who has been taught board games, chess, trigonometry games, and others. That's where the cure will come from. And the COVID cure vaccine. That's all.
Brilliant. I think we saved the most powerful till last there. Thanks everyone for a brilliant session. Krista, I've seen your hand. I'll just say Surinder wanted to ask you a question, and I think that's a great networking opportunity. I feel like more networking opportunities we should take as much as possible with these things being virtual. Krista, you had your hand up just before we finish.
I mean, there's a lot of great speakers here. I just want to spend 10 seconds. There was a speaker yesterday from Humans Who Play, Chloe, because if we're talking about digital games here, there are physical games as well. So I'm going to post their link in the chat. Go look at it. It's great activity. Not everything has to be digital, even though I am digital myself. If you want to do it physical, they have a solution at Humans Who Play.
That is excellent and links exactly to what I was going to close with, actually, which is just a plug for everybody involved with this type of technology to think about the most marginalized groups, especially if that's kind of your aim, and to keep doing that relentlessly. I think often here and with all the different technology available, it's very easy to find things that will work in a capital city but are not going to work in a rural village. We've got a report coming out relatively soon on the EdTech Hub, which is where I work. And one of the key recommendations is to only pilot things in the most difficult locations. So in the most rural environments, often the most expensive, but you at least find out if it works rather than kind of taking the easy route. So I realise, well, I would like to finish with a round of applause, even though it's just the presenters clapping themselves. But if we finish with a round of applause, and then I'll close and we can leave. But thanks ever so much everyone for being involved.
Thank you, everyone.
Keep awkwardly clapping. Thank you.